So if you've come before and you've heard me tell my stories, you know I like to talk about family. And I've introduced you to some of the various members of my crazy family. And so tonight I would like to introduce you to one more, to the one who's actually closest to me. My grandmother was not the grandmother that some of you guys might be thinking about. My other grandmother was the sweetest little old lady I ever knew. And she helped raise me, and she could bake the best chocolate chip cookies ever. She stood about 4'9.5" on a good day in heels. And at one point happened to be the highest ranking woman in the American Communist Party. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Welcome to my life. It's true. This is a true story. My grandmother, Dorothy Ray Healey, was the head of the Communist Party in Los Angeles from 1948 to 1962. Meaning, all right, got a commie up in here. Let's go. Solidarity forever. Meaning that she was the head of the party all throughout the 1950s. Which, as I've learned, was an awesome time to be a communist in America. Joe McCarthy, that dude loved my grandma. He loved her so much, he sent her to jail 3 times. And all 3 times she went to the Supreme Court, won, and got out. True story. Now, growing up as a kid with this as my grandma, I realized like my true spectrum of leftist superheroes, because that's what I had as a kid if that was my grandma. So on my spectrum, I don't know what your spectrum of leftist superhero, you guys all had spectrums of leftist superheroes? That was, all right, so mine went like this. Michael Moore, Fidel Castro, Captain Planet, then my grandma. Captain Planet, we're not familiar with that one here? Okay, sorry, ask your kids. Okay, so the best part was of this superheroes, I actually lived with mine. Because when I was born, she moved from LA to DC to help raise me and my brother. And now we're getting real. You're like, okay, we're actually getting to know this guy. So being raised by Comrade Grannie, as we called her. Comrade Grannie was not your usual childhood. When I was very little, when I was a baby, she would read me and my brother bedtime stories. And she would tuck us in and give us a glass of milk and then open up her book, Mao's Little Red Book. And it put us to sleep every night. And she was so proud when my first word was proletariat. And she was so proud. And when I was a little older, when I was in 1st grade, and I remember Halloween. I was excited. It was my first Halloween. I was gonna get a costume, and I really wanted to be Frankenstein. But Comrade Grannie, she was such a good grandma. She got me a costume with a mask of the scariest monster imaginable. His name was Ronald Reagan. Scared everybody. Terrifying. So this was my childhood, and when I was 10 years old, she took me to a protest outside of DC that shaped my politics to this day. And I want to share that story with you. So there was a strike out in the Maryland suburbs. And so we went, and Grandma picked me up from school, after school, and we drove out to support the rally. And nothing new so far, just another day in the struggle. That was my after-school programming. And we drive out, and we're going, and then I see the factory, and I see the sign above the factory, and I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. Because there on the sign overlooking the factory are these huge images of Twizzlers and Snickers and every delicious color of the Skittles rainbow. And I say, Grandma, are we protesting a candy factory? And she looks at the sign. She hadn't thought about what type of industry this is. She says, no, Joshy, we're not protesting. We're protesting the candy factory owners who aren't giving their workers a living wage. Now, I was 10 years old. I said, oh, so we're protesting a candy factory. And yes, we were. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. This is impossible. This can't be happening. I'm 10 years old, and we're literally in front of the real-life version of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And you're telling me I can't go inside and swim in the chocolate waterfalls and taste the candy lollipops? Not only that, but you're telling me you're trying to stop Willy Wonka from making candy at all? That's an injustice. The only candy workers I'm trying to support are little Oompa Loompas. Now, that argument did not work well with Comrade Grannie. So we joined the picket line. There's about 100 people, about maybe half the crowd, about maybe this size over here. And there's 100 people. And I remember the crowd very vividly. There was big men with mustaches and big women with mustaches. And some of their kids were there to support them and work on their own industrial facial hair. I remember it all. And we joined the picket, and we start, marching back and forth, which is really fun when you're 10 years old. Just walking back and forth with a group of strangers that you don't know, getting yelled out by cops, shouting slogans that have a lot of syllables, and sometimes they're in Russian and you don't really understand them. It was really fun. But the whole time I'm marching, I'm not thinking about, workers' rights or, living wages. I just look at that picture. I keep thinking about how delicious those sugary, sweet Skittles are gonna be inside. So I go up to Granny and I say, Grandma, you're Grandma for this skit, is that okay? We're friends, is that cool? All right. So I say, Granny, and I get real nice. I say, Granny, do you think maybe I could go ask and maybe I could go get, some candy? And I put on my sweet little voice. And Comrade Grannie says, Joshua, 2-minute warning, I'm going way over it, sorry bro. He says, Joshy, I'm very disappointed in you. We've taught you in this family you do not cross picket lines. You don't want to be a scab, do you? And I'm just crushed. A scab. A scab. Now, a scab is, just the replacement worker to go and hire the factory when the strike's going on. But in my family, a scab is the worst thing ever. It's the traitor to the working class. It's the Uncle Tom in the room full of Black Panthers. It is the ultimate 4-letter word. You could be a pinko, yes. You could be a homo, hell yes. But you cannot be a scab. So when she says, are you gonna be a scab? I say, no, Grandma, I'll be good. So I keep marching. And she says, well, if you're hungry, just go get something from the corner down the block. So I go down the block, and I'm walking to the corner, and that's when I hear, psst, psst, over here. And I turn around, and there's this kid. He's even younger than me. He's smiling, and he's got like this bright green shirt and dark curly hair, and he says, psst, you're trying to get in, aren't you? I said, maybe. Why do you ask? He's like, I know how to get in. My name's Bobby. Come with me. And he runs off. And I look around. And I don't see Grandma. And I don't see anyone. So I'm not going to be crossing the picket line. I'll just be going around it. And so I follow Bobby. I take off after Bobby. And we go and we jump a fence. We cross the parking lot. We climb on top of a dumpster. And sure enough, there's a window. There's an open window into the factory. And Bobby climbs in. And so do I. And I'm inside the candy factory. I'm inside the candy factory. And it's not exactly what I expected. So there's no chocolate waterfalls and there's no lollipop trees. But there are assembly lines and conveyor belts. And one of those conveyor belts ends, oh my God. Oh my God, in a tub. A tub filled with thousands, millions of delicious blue and red and yellow Skittles. And so we go to the tub and jump in. And it feels so good. And it tastes even better. And we're inside the candy factory eating the Skittles. And I'm like, Bobby, this is amazing. This is my new best friend. He doesn't even know who the hell I am. Bobby, how did you get in? How did you know how to get in? And Bobby's like, you see that guy over there? He's young, but he talks like an old man whispering. You see that guy over there? That guy working that machine? That's my dad. And I choke on my Skittles almost. I'm like, Bobby's dad is a scab. Does that make Bobby a scab? And if I'm in here eating the Skittles, what does that make me? Pretty big questions for a 10-year-old inside a tub of Skittles. But before I can ponder it any further, Bobby says, uh-oh, shift change. We gotta go. So we jump out of the tub of Skittles, we climb back up, go through the window, off the dumpster, through the parking lot, back out to the front. At the front, the scene has changed. Now there's 3 cops waiting there. The strikers are now not marching, they're just standing there waiting, and there's a row of cars that are about to try and make their way in. The whistle blows, the shift change, the cars start trying to make their way through the strikers. The police are pushing the strikers back with their batons. Grandma is there at the front of the line shouting, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever. I look over, I see Bobby sitting on the curb. He's looking for his dad, looking for someone, looking like he's about to cry. And here I am, right in the middle. I've got Grandma on one side, Bobby on the other. I've got a pocket full of Skittles burning their way in my jeans. What am I doing? And 5 minutes later, the chaos ends. Everything starts to calm down. Some of the scabs have gotten through. Some have decided it wasn't worth it and they go home. And Grandma takes my hand and we start walking back to the car. And I see on the other side of the street, I see Bobby walking with his dad, also holding hands. And I can feel the Skittles kind of jingling in my pocket. And so I look up at my grandma. It's my grandmother. And I have this question. I say, Grandma, if you're the son of a scab, does that make you a scab? And she looks at me for a second, like only a grandma can, right? And she says, no, Joshy, it doesn't. Just like being the son of an activist doesn't make you an activist. Everybody has to choose. Why do you ask? And I realized I gotta tell her. So I put my hand in my pocket, I take them out, I open my hand, and I show her. And I'm afraid to look her in the eye, but I can't help it. And in her eyes, I see the anger. and the disappointment melt away. And I see my grandmother. I see my first comrade. And I see her smile and realize that she's with her 10-year-old grandson. And she says, "Give me those." And so I do. And she says, "Well, there's really only one thing to do at this historical moment. As Marx would say, we need to share the wealth." And she takes half and gives the half back to me. And she says, "There, equality for the masses." And she takes my hand and she says, "All right, Joshie, let's go home." Thank you, guys.